In Ethiopia, government security forces allegedly commit grave abuses against their own people. The country's leader goes largely unchecked by the United States, which sees him as an ally in the war on terror. In Vietnam, people continue to suffer the consequences of Agent Orange more than 3 decades since the war there ended. And in Peru, an energy boom threatens to cause lasting harm in the rainforest. If you hadn't heard these stories before, it's not necessarily because you haven't been paying attention. These stories have gone largely unreported in the mainstream news media.
And then there are vast areas of the world where there simply is no reporting at all because people have reduced the number of foreign correspondents that they're prepared to support as media organizations, and they're just not there.
Since 2006, the Pulitzer Center on Crisis Reporting has made improving the quality and quantity of global journalism its business. The nonprofit Pulitzer Center funds reporters through grants.
We give just small grants, really, for the most part, travel grants that enable reporters to get out into regions to do the work. We are flooded with proposals from areas of the world and issues that are simply not being covered in the American media. So it's quite apparent what the need is.
Jon Sawyer heads the Pulitzer Center. Natalie Applewhite, on his left, is the Pulitzer Center's associate director. And Stephanie Haynes, to the right, is a reporter who Pulitzer recently awarded a grant to report on the restoration of a national park in Mozambique. Haynes' story appeared in the Smithsonian Magazine.
One of the things that I always have to deal with when I'm pitching stories is to try to convince editors that Africa matters. I report out of Johannesburg, South Africa, and travel around sub-Saharan Africa. And often you get a lot of people who are skeptical that this part of the world matters. But what I found is that I think that people actually do care. I think that unfortunately in our industry there's this perception that Americans don't care about the world, and in particular they don't care about Africa.
From the sheer volume of news, editors seem plainly convinced Americans care about one thing, hands down.
Right, it's celebrity stars, but also it's about local coverage. Local people have thought that there is more, more engagement in your local issues very close to home. And we try to show in our projects that many of these issues do affect us close to home. It's just that we often don't know about them.
Then there are the economic reasons. In today's business climate, large American media outlets seem less willing to invest the significant resources global reporting requires. So Pulitzer Center has assumed that role.
So we're very fortunate to have 3 guests here with us today.
The Pulitzer team is taking its message on the road and speaking to a somewhat unlikely audience, high school students.
As we got more into the projects and we thought about, well, what were all the issues facing American journalism, as much as the crisis in journalism was about the lack of, on the supply side, the lack of stories, areas that were not being covered, but there was an equally big crisis on the demand side. This whole issue that all of us as journalists have been dealing with, that fewer and fewer young people are accessing or using conventional, traditional media. And so we've felt, and we've been thinking a lot about this and how to approach it, that as much as important as the stories themselves are, that it can't stop just with the publication or the broadcast of the story, that we have to actively get it out to the community.
On trips like this one to a suburban St. Louis high school, the Pulitzer Center team discovers not only is a segment of the student population interested in global news, but they are disappointed that so much has been withheld from them.
I've been someone who feels like I'm very well in tune with what's going on in the world. I read the newspaper, I watch the news, so I just kind of assumed that I knew pretty well everything there was, and today's lesson just kind of showed me that there's so much more that we don't see as Americans.
I like to stay fairly up to date in what's going on, but I also question the choices that some of the media makes and what is going to be included and what's going to be displayed each day. So I really don't feel like I'm getting the complete story and everything, but
these kind of issues are really interesting to me, human rights and violations of human rights, and I think that everybody needs to know about what's going on around the world and what we can do to help.
But as sad it is, and most teenagers, we're interested in the gossip and the controversy of things like Anna Nicole Smith dying or the astronaut love triangle.
And it's sad that that gets out there more than important issues that affect the world instead of just gossip.
Pulitzer Center hopes to engage students and the general public by teaming up with KETC, the public television station in St. Louis, Missouri, and educational partners. Together they form the Global Gateway, a portal through which students and educators, along with the public, can connect with and act on international issues.
The lessons of history that we have, that we purport to teach, from the fall of Rome to the Vietnam War and everything in between, are playing out in our world today. And if we don't see them, and if we don't learn of them, and if we don't apply the lessons that we think that we have learned, they're just destined to repeat and to repeat and to repeat. And that was one of the many important things that I was so glad. But only 25 of my students saw that. That's the part where it has to be bigger. It has to be, and that's why I applaud the Pulitzer Center so much for their efforts. It's extraordinarily important work.